I did want to ask you, and we have to ask you the question having you on here. Obviously, you're at ESPN for 20 plus years, and kind of the transition when you left there. Just want to kind of get your story and just kind of hear like towards the end of your career at ESPN, how that transition was. What was behind you, kind of the departure of ESPN and all of that, and then kind of getting into. I know you did podcasts for a while now in the DraftKings and having your own shows here. What kind of went behind all of that?
Yeah, it's real simple for me. I loved ESPN for most of the time I was there. And I love doing NFL Live. I love doing the draft. I love doing US Open and an Open Championship or the British Open golf. I loved all of that. I did Wimbledon. I did US Open tennis. And then Chris Berman was going to be moved on for Sunday Countdown. And I felt like I had earned that job. And they were adamant about giving it to another person based on something that had nothing to do with merit. And that bothered me greatly. And then they offered me the morning radio show with Golick, Mike Golick, who is still a very good friend of mine. I do work with him with DraftKings and Golick Jr. But I knew really immediately right away that the morning radio show was not for me. The hours are difficult. And I didn't like not watching the games and pretending like I watched the games. That was the biggest thing for me.
What do you mean by that, Trey?
Well, if you're getting up at 3:30 in the morning, you're not watching an NBA game that goes on at midnight. It's not happening. It's not possible. I watched every NFL game, and I watched, the college football playoffs before they were expanded. But you can't watch every game. You can't do it. I didn't like faking it. I didn't like pretending like I watched the games. And so that was a problem for me. And I told them very early on, hey, this was great and I appreciate it, but I don't want to do this going forward. And I thought I was being a good employee and saying, you need to prepare for something else and hopefully we can find something else I can do. Because to this day, the 2020 NFL draft, still the highest rated draft of all time. If you look at press releases when they put them out for NFL Live, they say highest rating since 2017. Which means the ratings that happened when I was on the show were higher than the ratings they are now. And I had a friend of mine that told me, hey, they think this radio thing is a big promotion for you. And if you don't take it, they'll hold it against you. So I took the job for the right reasons. And then I immediately knew that wasn't for me. And I quit the job for the right reasons because I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to do something that I wasn't fully invested in. And I didn't want to do it because it made me more money. And I didn't want to do it because somebody else thought it was important. I wanted to do the things that I wanted to do. And since that time, I've been able and very lucky, whether it's through Caesars or DraftKings or the podcasts or NBC Sports or PGA Tour, where I do all these things, I'm doing the things that I want to do. I don't want to do the things that somebody else that tells me is important for them to do.
Love that.
So for me, most people would say, oh, this is the highest paid job you'll ever have in your life. Just suck it up. And I was like, no, this is not for me. And I'll give you an example of just how this has sort of been my whole MO my entire career. I started out very early in my career as a page at NBC in New York. And if you ever watch the show 30 Rock, the character Jack with the blue blazer, like that's what a page was. You gave guided tours of the building and did all this menial work and all this kind of stuff. Well, when I was a page, a guy named Mark McCormick, who founded the company IMG, International Management Group, which is the largest sports marketing agency in the world, offered me a job to work with them at covering Wimbledon clothing lines and the pens and all this kind of stuff. And I would be doing all this international travel, but it wasn't really what I wanted to do. So he offered me a job and I said, thank you, no, but I really want to, if I don't do this thing with broadcasting, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. Like whether I failed or succeeded was irrelevant. I had to try. And if I didn't try, I wouldn't be able to live with myself. So I turned him down and I kept being a page at NBC. And then I got a local broadcasting job in Binghamton, New York, which is market 1,765, making no money. And from there, I moved on to Allentown, Pennsylvania, and then St. Louis, Missouri, and then ESPN. The point of me telling you this is that I followed what I thought was the right thing for me. And then in about 2008, I got a call from a guy named Sandy Montag, who at that time was the biggest sports agent in the world. He had Bob Costas, he had James Brown, he had everybody. He had John Madden, everybody that was anybody in sports. Sandy Montag was their agent, and he was at IMG, and he called me and said, "Hey, I really like your work. I would like to represent you." The point of this story is I turned down a job working for IMG to follow my passion and to follow what I believed I wanted to do. And at the end of the day, instead of me working for IMG called me and said, "We want to work for you." And so that's the message I would give to anybody who wants to do this business, is that make sure you're doing it for the right reasons and make sure you're following your heart. Because if you're not, it's very easy to get caught up in the hot take clickbait BS that's out there now. And that's not anything I wanted to be a part of. And so for me, walking away from that radio show because it wasn't what I wanted to do sort of went in line with everything that I had done in my entire career, including saying no to this. I mean, I still have the IMG business card. It's amazing. New York, Rome, Rio, Paris, Stade, like LA. Like
what is Stade?
Exactly. GSTAAD. It's a city in Switzerland. Like, it was the most amazing business card I've ever seen in my life, but it just wasn't for me. It wasn't for me at the time. So I would tell everybody in this business, make sure you're doing this for the right reasons and doing it for the reasons you want to do it.
And that was words from the wise, Trey. Like, that was beautifully well said. Great story. And I kind of, to carry on with that, what is like you were at ESPN for a long time, worked with some great people. Who was like, not a mentor, but somebody who you like appreciated the most, was just your favorite person to be around in that environment?
Well, there's a couple ways to answer that. First of all, the thing about ESPN is it's not that way now, but at that time it was so big that you really only hung out with the people that you worked with,
Okay.
Like there are morning shows, there are afternoon shows, there are night shows, and I started doing overnight shows with Kenny Mayne. And that was awesome. And we did that for 2 years. And then we did the 6 o'clock Sports Center for a couple of years. And actually, Kenny texted me today, and we were talking about something completely non-related to sports, which I will not share, but we were just having a good time. Yeah. So the point is, when you're in that situation, you find yourself sort of gravitating to the people you work with. And for me, the most fun I had at ESPN for 15 years was working on NFL Live and doing the golf, the US Open and the British Open. But like, to this day, guys I'm still in touch with, Mark Schlereth, Darren Woodson, Jeff Saturday, Tim Hasselbeck, Damian Woody, Ryan Clark, the guys, Teddy Bruschi, the guys that I did NFL Live with all those years. And those are still my best friends. They're still all my guys. They're still the guys I hang out with, still the guys I talk to. And that's the fun part for me. The other part of that situation, we talk about mentors, is that there was a local guy in New York, a guy named Warner Wolf, who I loved as a kid growing up. I thought it was really cool and fun. And then when I worked in St. Louis, Bob Costas at that time was the preeminent sportscaster. And, he worked at NBC, but he got his job locally in St. Louis. So Bob was a mentor. And then Chris Berman, for sure, was a mentor for me. Yeah. And one of my first days at ESPN, I ran into Booner. He's in the men's room. And I said, Chris, I don't know if you remember me, but I ran into you at Busch Stadium in St. Louis in the press box. And he goes, "Oh yeah, you were the cheddar smoky guy." Now, what's a cheddar smoky? It's basically a hot dog shoved with cheddar cheese. And Boomer was in there calling the game, and I said, "Boom, you got to try the cheddar smokies. They're really good here." And like one of my third days at ESPN, boom, I ran into him in the men's room, and he was like, you're the cheddar smoky guy. And I was like, the fact that he remembered that, I thought was great. And, Boomer and I still get together every year. He has a place in Hawaii. I have a place in Hawaii. We go out there and play golf together, and we tell the cheddar smoky story every time. So it's fun, and it's great. And so those were the guys that were mentors to me. But the guys that I was in the trenches with, for lack of a better term, all those years. Those are the guys that are still my guys, and I text them all the time. And I just texted Damian the other day about some take he had about Jaden Daniels, and I was like, "Yo, bro, I think you're right on this." And it's nice to know that those relationships still exist well beyond either me or somebody else, like Mark Schlereth, who now works at Fox, working together, and we're just still friends.
Yeah. Hey, what's going on there? It's Jeff Iafrate. Appreciate you for finishing the video. You can check out one of the videos here suggested or show support by commenting, liking, and subscribing. And buy your merchandise, officialctsports.com.